Welcome to Inside the PSC, an in-depth look at the inner workings of the Public Service Commission of West Virginia. I'm your host, Karen Hall, and my guest today is Chairman Charlotte R. Lane. Today we're going to talk about the importance of life in public service. We're going to start our conversation after this video that the chairman recorded earlier. This is the season when the orange barrels appear on our highways, and she has some very good advice about how to stay safe when you are driving through construction zones. Let's watch.
Hello, I'm Charlotte Lane, Chairman of the West Virginia Public Service Commission. Road crews are busy repairing our highways and city streets. So I encourage you to take extra precautions when driving through construction zones. Did you know that on average more than 700 fatalities occur in work zones every year? Saving a little time is never worth another person's life. If that's not enough to slow you down, remember that ticket amounts are double for driving infractions in construction zones. In cooperation with other law enforcement agencies, the Public Service Commission's Transportation Division has posted extra patrols in some high-traffic construction zones. Our officers are there to monitor commercial trucks and buses, but you still need to use caution. Rear-end crashes are extremely common in work zones, and large vehicles have large blind spots and require extra space to stop. Never cut off a big truck. To avoid accidents, follow a few common sense driving tips. Start with a little research so you know if there is construction on your planned route. If so, either leave early or take another route. Pay attention to all signage around the work zone. You may encounter closed lanes, reduced speeds, detours, or shifts in the traffic pattern, and be prepared to stop at any time. When there is a lane closure, move over as soon as possible. Don't wait until the last minute or try to race around another vehicle to get in front of it, especially if it is a semi-truck or bus. As you move into the correct lane, be mindful of blind spots, yours and other drivers. Distracted driving is more dangerous than ever in construction zones. Pay attention to traffic conditions, not your cell phone, GPS, or conversation with other passengers. Whatever it is, it can wait. We all want the potholes and rough roads to be repaired, so let's drive safely around the people who are doing this important work.
Timely advice. Welcome to Inside the PSC, Chairman Lane. It's so good to have you again. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, and I'm glad to be back.
Oh, good, good. You know, I want to talk to you about your life in public service, but I think it's really important that we get started with your background. Now, I know that you grew up in a rural part of Pleasants County, which is just up the Ohio River. And can you describe your life there?
Yes, I grew up on a farm off Polecat Hollow in Pleasants County, and it was a farm that had been in my family for generations. I think it was first owned by maybe my great-grandfather. My father bought the farm from his mother when he returned from World War II, and that's where he proceeded to raise his family. I was one of 4 children. I have 3 brothers, 2 older brothers and 1 younger. And the farm was very small, but we mostly raised cattle. And my dad worked at a chemical plant, the American Cyanamide plant, which was at Willow Island, was a laborer. And he did farming on the side both for our own use and to sell stuff. And my mother, for the most part, was an at-home mom, a very good cook, and raised all 4 children. And it wasn't until after we had all gone away from home that she actually worked outside the home. She worked at what was then the Colin Anderson Center up above St. Mary's. And so that's where I grew up. The farm now, we sold the farm when my mother died about 8 years ago. None of the children had time to live on the farm or take care of the farm, so we sold it, and that was very sad because it was great growing up there, but we just couldn't take care of it. And my brothers now, I have one brother lives in Houston, one brother that lives in St. Mary's, and one brother that lives here.
Wow, that's quite a story of the origins. So now I understand from conversations we've had in the past that one of the things that really influenced you when you were very young was you won the Golden Horseshoe. And for those who don't know, the Golden Horseshoe Award is given out to a very select group of 8th graders who prove their extensive knowledge of West Virginia history, geography, and politics. So tell us what that experience was like.
Well, I was very excited when I won. There were 4 of us from Pleasants County, and we made the trip to Charleston, to the Capitol, where we would be knighted or made Knights of the Golden Horseshoe or Ladies of the Golden Horseshoe, and that took place in the House chamber at the Capitol. And so when I was there, sitting in the House chamber, the governor came and spoke to us. I was so impressed with all of the surroundings and what we were doing that was the day that I decided, ooh, I would like to run for office and come back as a member of the House of Delegates. And so from that day on, I was sort of focused on that and decided that the best way to be involved in public life would be to be a lawyer. So when I graduated from high school, I went to Marshall University. I majored in both political science and journalism, and I graduated in 3 years because I wanted to get on to law school and graduate from law school before I was too old. And so I thought if I graduated at 24 rather than 25 from law school, that was much preferable. So anyway, so I went to summer school at Marshall, graduated in 3 years, and then went on to law school and graduated in 1972. And then moved to Charleston after that, and have been in Charleston basically ever since, except for a short period of time when I was living in Washington, D.C.
So you went to law school, it must have been in the late 60s.
Yes.
What was your class like?
I started in 1969. There were 3 women in my class, and that was back in the days when all of the men had to dress up in coat and ties. The women had to wear dresses. And so 3 women, that was an unusual experience, but everybody treated us really nicely. And the law school then at WVU was downtown, and I lived, probably a mile away, so I would walk to school. And in the wintertime, it got very cold in Morgantown, but we weren't allowed to wear pants. So I went to the dean and said, okay, we have to walk to school. Can we wear pants because it's so cold out there? And the dean was very understanding. He thought about it and he said, okay, but they have to be pantsuits. Now, do you remember back in the 60s, early 70s, women wore pantsuits. We didn't wear this, separates or anything like that. You went to the store and you bought a pantsuit.
I remember it well.
So the dean said we could do that, and that was very nice of him. I was always very appreciative.
Well, and it sounds like you were dedicated to making change that affected people's lives from the very beginning.
Yes. Yes, and another thing, we had a great dean. There were 2 legal fraternities at the law school, and they didn't admit women. And so once again, another law student and I, we went to the dean and said, Dean, they won't admit women. And he was sort of surprised, and he said, well, I'm going to tell them they have to admit women or we'll just kick them out of the law school. And the dean did that, and that summer, one of the They changed their rules to allow women in the legal fraternities.
Wow, that is really quite an accomplishment. Now, I know that you are a really strong advocate for people getting into public service. What really sparked your interest in public affairs?
Well, it was just the whole idea of history and politics and civics and the workings of government just made it really fascinating to me.
That is amazing. It really is. Now, we're going to take a quick break to watch another video, and I think this is the perfect place for it because we're going to talk to people about a way that they can get involved in public service. So let's watch this video.
Hello, I'm Charlotte Lane, Chairman of the West Virginia Public Service Commission. Remember those old posters? A stern Uncle Sam looks out solemnly over a caption that says, "I want you for U.S. Army. Today isn't a check into nostalgia, and you're not wanted for the Army. This is my pitch to recruit you to the Public Service Commission. Like old Uncle Sam, our commission needs you too. If you're looking for interesting work, you couldn't find better than the commission. Looking for the exotic? Yes, we have that too. Any number of intriguing cases come before us. Looking for a place that will challenge your talents? Couldn't find better. Want to work where you can have a real impact, make a difference in the lives of many people? This is the spot. For the enormous amount of work we do, we have a tiny staff, fewer than 230 people. We need you. We particularly need people smart in math, in business, police officers, engineers, lawyers, and other specialists. If you are about to graduate from college in one of those areas, come see us. Know of a recent graduate in one of those fields? Let them know we're looking. Are you in a rut and need a change? That happens to a lot of people. If you've had a successful career in the private sector and you are considering a second career, we'd love to talk to you. Nearing retirement age but having second thoughts about the rocking chair? Come talk. The work is very satisfying. You use your brain to examine some of the most complex issues you'll ever face, but it's not all hard work. We have great hours, competitive salaries, and exceptional benefits. You have nothing to lose and so much to gain. Give us a chance to give you a chance. Call us at 304-340-0300. I don't want to sound like one of those commercials, but that number is worth repeating, 304-340-0300. You'll be pleasantly surprised, I suspect.
And working at the Public Service Commission is a great career path for just about anybody. We have so many wonderful people working there. And a great leader.
Thank you.
So now we get to the good part. I understand that you first ran for office when you were 29 years old and pregnant. What an experience that must have been. Why did you choose then to run?
Well, I started running before I got pregnant.
Oh, okay.
And it wasn't until on the campaign trail that I figured out that I was pregnant. After I graduated from law school, for 5 years during the regular session of the legislature, I worked for the House Judiciary Committee. And that gave me a really good experience on how laws are made, how people get votes, and all of the issues. And that just intensified my interest in being a delegate and running for office. And so in 1979, I decided it was time to run, and so I ran and was elected. Now, you have to remember that back then, Democrats in the state were 2-1, and Republicans were in a real minority. So I was a Republican. I won as a Republican, and back then, Kanawha County was all one district, and we had either 12 or 14 delegates, and we all ran at large, and so I was elected then in 1979.
Okay, so you were elected in the 1970s, excuse me, in the 1980s, in the 1990s, and again in 2017.
Yes.
Now, You took breaks in
No,
between
no,
there?
no. Oh, no. I always ran for re-election and was never re-elected. And so, but I never gave up because I still liked it. And, there's a whole lots of reasons probably why I wasn't re-elected. Maybe I didn't work hard enough. I don't know. But it never killed my enthusiasm for wanting to serve West Virginia. So I kept it up. And when I ran in 2016 and served in 2017, that was the first time that that I served with the Republicans as a majority. And it was really, really different. I mean, it of course was a lot more fun to be in the majority. And we were able to get more bills passed and stuff like that. When I had been in before and was in the minority, you were forced to work across party lines. I had to work with Democrats to get legislation passed. There was a period of time when Republican legislation couldn't even get passed if a Republican were the lead sponsor. So I would work with Democrats on good ideas and let them be the lead sponsor, and then we would get it passed. And so I have to say that having served in the minority and having served in the majority, I would much prefer serving in the majority.
I'm sure that's very true. But I also have heard you speak before about the importance of working across the aisle and being able to cooperate
Yes.
with one another.
Yes. People who run for office come from all backgrounds, and they all have the best of intentions of serving their state, and they all have different ideas. And I think it's important that everyone work together to try to come up with the best ideas to serve West Virginia.
I think that is an excellent philosophy, and I'm so glad that you were there to represent us. What is the legislation that you worked on that you're the most proud of?
Well, I've worked on a lot of legislation, but one piece of legislation that I worked on the last time I was in the legislature was the medical marijuana bill. And I am not an advocate for, doing away with all regulation of marijuana, but I had been one of the things that we had passed in, I think, 1979 was a medical marijuana bill, because there was a delegate from Kanawha County who was suffering cancer. She was in a lot of pain, and her friends told us that if she could use medical marijuana, it would relieve her pain. So we passed the bill, and it was never implemented. So in 2017, when the opportunity came to pass medical marijuana again, I worked on it very hard, because I thought that if it would help people in pain, then we should pass it, and that's what we did.
That's really thoughtful, and it's interesting that you were working on that as far back as 1979.
I know, it was unheard of, but it was because this woman who was a delegate from Kanawha County had such respect from everybody, and we all wanted to help her.
That's great. That's great. Now, you must have really been involved in some tight votes at some times too. Can you remember some of those?
A lot of my votes were tight. No, I can't really, right off the top of my head, I can't really think of any right now.
Okay. So, in the time that you were at the State House, I know you've seen enormous changes. What is the biggest change that you've seen?
Well, it's sort of interesting, because back when I was first in the legislature, I was still practicing law, because we're a part-time legislature, and you still have clients that you have to help them. And so when you're up at the Capitol and your clients are downtown, so back then the only way we could communicate with our offices were payphones, if you can believe that. We didn't have fax machines, and so it was very stressful to continue to practice law and be a delegate. And since then, of course, we have cell phones and video conferencing, and everything is so much easier now than it used to be. Plus, when I was first elected, we did not have offices. The only thing that we had were our desks on the floor of the House. And back in 1985, the legislature decided that it needed offices for the legislature. And so the east wing of the Capitol, the second floor, which actually ironically housed the Public Service Commission. And so the legislature decided that the Public Service Commission could build its own building and vacate that office space, and that space would be used for legislators. And that's been a really big help, because when people are trying to serve their constituents, they need something other than the desk on the floor to be able to operate.
I'm sure that's very true. That makes so much sense. Now, I know you mentioned earlier that your career also took you to Washington, D.C., and
Yes.
you were a member of the U.S. International Trade
Yes.
Commission there.
Yes.
What were you doing there?
Well, when my term as chairman and commissioner ended in 2003, President Bush had just been elected to the presidency, and I decided that maybe I would.
This is President Bush the first.
No,
the
President
second.
George
W. Bush. Okay.
And West Virginia was responsible for getting him elected president. So I decided that maybe I'd like to go to Washington. So I started making some contacts and calls. And so I was appointed to the U.S. International Trade Commission, which is a commission of 6 commissioners that deals with trade issues, meaning goods coming from other countries into the U.S. and harming U.S. industries. We would investigate those cases.
Oh, very
And so I was there for 8 years.
Wow. Okay. And you've served 3 terms on the Public Service
Well,
Commission.
I've been elected 4 times.
No, on the Public Service Commission.
Yes.
Yeah?
I'm sorry, you're right. 3 times the Public Service Commission, yes.
Twice
that's
as chairman.
right. Yes.
Now, what are the big regulatory changes that you've seen?
Well, the big changes are we don't deal as much with telecommunications as we once did. Electricity is a really big issue because we have an overriding EPA that's trying to shut down our coal plants, and the EPA doesn't seem to understand that we need to have coal plants running, base load running, in order for a reliable electric system. And so that is one of the biggest changes, that the EPA is trying to tell us how to do our job. Okay. And the EPA doesn't know what they're talking about.
As you have made perfectly clear on a number of occasions, I think really the thing that we are down to the last little bit of our time, and the thing we really wanted to get to is, I know that you are absolutely passionate about encouraging people to enter public service, to dedicate their lives to that, because you have given your entire life to the state of West Virginia in one way or another. And can you explain why you think that is the thing people should do?
West Virginia is a great place to live and work. And I want people to be involved. I don't want people to complain about their government. I want them to be involved in making West Virginia a better place to live and work. And what better way to do that than to get involved in state government or local government, or just helping people who are running for office. I just think that's very important. If we want our state to grow and be a great place, a better place to live, then we need to get more people involved in the running of the state, both at the local government level and the state level.
I think you're absolutely right there. And another thing too, if they don't feel comfortable actually going out and running for office or doing that sort of thing, working for the state is another option.
Yes,
and there are so many wonderful positions open.
Yes, there are. We at the Public Service Commission have a lot of openings, and we would welcome anybody that wants to come down and work. Mm-hmm. And also, if people don't want to run for office, then help your friends who are running for office, because it's a lot of work to put yourself out there to run for office.
So what advice would you give to young people if they're maybe discouraged by the current political atmosphere?
I would tell them to not be discouraged, to seek out candidates that they feel comfortable with and work with them or work for them, or at 18 they can run for office themselves.
Wow. Now, I'm sure that I realized that intellectually, but thinking about running at 18, and I do remember there was a young man who was elected mayor of Huntington, I think, at 18 or 19, just a few years ago.
Well, we've had people in the legislature running while they were still in high school and being elected. We've had several delegates who were elected right out of high school.
Wow, that's really impressive. I'm sure it was great to have those young, fresh ideas being brought into the mix. Excellent, excellent. Well, I tell you what, we're really running out of time, but do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share?
Well, I just want to say that I appreciate taping these programs because it lets me get my message out to a whole wider audience than what I normally do. But that West Virginia is a great place to work and live, and we all need to work together to make it an even better place.
And I totally agree with you. I thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And it's always a pleasure. I think we have something big lined up for next time. So thanks to everyone who's watching. Until next time, this is Inside the PSC.